Rumours circulating in Stanley that the Argentine aircraft the Vicencio de Mayo entered the 150-mile defence area set up around the Falklands by Britain are untrue. Major Peter Mellor, the Public Information Officer, said today that there's no evidence to support the rumours, and the recent activity by Phantom aircraft is a part of the normal surveillance operations. A word about public holidays. The public holidays over the Christmas period, as gazetted, show Monday the 27th, Tuesday the 28th, and Wednesday the 29th as official holidays. Monday the 3rd of January is also an official holiday, in lieu of the 1st of Jan, which this year, of course, or next year, falls on the Saturday. That's the New Year's Day holiday. If you're going to be out and about early on Boxing Day morning, then you may possibly see a rather unusual event in the Falklands. 3 free-fall parachute jumps over Stanley. The first jump is scheduled for 10 past 8, 08:10 hours, when WO1 Bill Rule, RAOC, from HQ Biffy, Lance Corporal Kevin Dakin, who's with 8th Field Squadron Royal Engineers, and Captain Mike Dunford, who's also in the Royal Engineers, will first of all jump from 4,000 feet onto Stanley Racecourse. They'll then make a second parachute jump from a Scout helicopter at 7,000 feet, hoping to land on the helicopter triangle at Government House. And their third jump will be the tricky one. At about 25 to 10, they'll be jumping from a height of 3,500 feet, hoping to land on the Baltic Ferry. The team will be reduced by one for this final attempt, so 2 people jumping from a helicopter and landing on the Baltic Ferry. If you'd like to witness the 3 jumps, obviously the first 2 are the more accessible, so you can have a good close look. That's the one onto the race course at 10 past 8, and a little bit after that onto the triangle. If the weather's unsuitable in the morning, then the jumps will be made in the evening, starting at 10 past 5 for the first one, 6 o'clock for the second onto the triangle, and 25 to 7 for the one onto the Baltic Ferry. The jump master is WO2 Bill Rule, and WO1 Bill Rule, that is, and during the jumps he'll have strapped to his foot a smoke grenade, so he'll set that off to indicate that the jumps are in progress, and he'll be able to follow him down. There'll also be some smoke signals from the ground. Those are to give advice to the parachutists as to wind direction and strength. So, assuming the weather's okay, be up and around about 10 past 8 on Sunday morning. It's always a very impressive sight, I think, free-fall parachuting. Now, at the beginning of the programme I mentioned a special offer we have, and I've got a note here from Sir Rex Hunt, the Civil Commissioner, saying that there's a number of order forms, which in fact we have here at the radio station now, for a limited edition print of Keith Shackleton's HMS Endurance in the Ice. This was commissioned by Lord Buxton. The number of the prints is limited to 850, and they're priced at £28.75. And the total takings from the sale of the print will produce a contribution of £1,000 to the South Atlantic Fund from sales of the print. So if you would like an order form, then pop up to the radio station. I'd suggest you leave it till after Christmas, because we're running a sort of slight skeleton routine over the next few days. So pop in next week and look for an order form, and we'll give you one. We've mentioned on the programme several times before the great Stanley Raft Race, which is happening on Boxing Day in the afternoon. The latest information I have is that there are 21 entries and still some more expected. If you do want to make a late entry, that's fine. You can turn up on the day. As long as you're afloat, you'll be allowed to enter. The course will run from the monument, the first Battle of the Falklands monument, towards the flagstaff by the Upland Goose Hotel. The start is at 2 o'clock. And competitors should assemble at around about 1:30 for judging, because of course there's a prize for the best dressed raft as well as the performance prizes. There will be lifeboats around who'll be able to tow you around the place if your raft is not terribly fast moving. There'll be a presentation after it's all over on the green at the Goose. And a reminder about the fun run, which is going to be happening around the streets of Stanley on New Year's Day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's open to everybody who'd like to take part, serviceman, civilian, male, female. It's intended both for serious competitors and those who would merely wish to atone for the excesses of the festive season. Fancy dress, I'm told, is optional. No entry fee, no prizes, but certificates will be awarded for the first 100 finishers, showing time and placing. The course will start and finish opposite Government House and will consist of 2 laps of a 2.5-mile circuit round the perimeter of the town, so it should be good fun for spectators. Entry forms are available around the place, and they should really have been submitted. They should really be submitted by Thursday the 30th of December. You can either pick one up from the post office or shops, but if you're really lazy or if you can't get into a shop to pick up an entry form, just turn up on the day, and I'm sure the formalities won't be terribly demanding. Telephone inquiries if you want more information to WO2 Carlisle on Civil 252 or Major Thane on Military Extension 705. Should be fun, the fun run, I think. You're listening to Falkland's News Desk. It's 27 minutes to 9. And we heard last night in the programme about the unique design of the moorings for the Coastel, the Safe Dominia, big blue floating thing that at the moment is sitting in the middle of the harbour in Stanley. Well, it's going to be moved to the Canache shortly, when conditions permit. It weighs 5,000 tonnes, so some fairly massive moorings are needed. And as we heard last night, the design is of concrete-filled containers which have been buried ashore, filled with concrete, and used as bases for the bollards, massive anchors, if you like. Well, tonight we present a report on the construction site where the moorings and the groins, or the little short jetties which will provide access to the Coastel, the Safe Dominia, and also stop it rubbing up against on the shore. The groins, the moorings, and indeed the access road are being finished off by 30 Field Squadron Royal Engineers. Well, to start my examination of the Coastel mooring site, I've come down on a Mexi float. That's the engine you can hear in the background. And with me is Sergeant Chris Sofley of 30 Squadron Royal Engineers, 30 Field Squadron. Chris, what's going on? You've got 3 groins altogether, sticking out into the neck of the Carnache. How are you building these things?
Well, firstly, as you can see, with great difficulty. The problems that we have with building these groins is the fact that they're actually, what we're using, the timber that we are using, is a timber called greenheart. And apart from being an extremely heavy, very, very heavy wood, it is poisonous when drilled, and we have to wear masks unless we actually dampen the thing down. If anyone can come up with a solution of stopping the tides, they can contact me any day.
Have a word with the moon, yes.
That's right. Yes, we find that we can only work really at low tides, although we've got divers with us and they're doing a very, very good job. But
what is the reach of the tide here? How much does it go up and down?
It goes from about 0.5 up to about 1.6, 1.7
metres.
Yes, of course. The groins that you can see here are completely immersed. Of course, this is just the bottom level. We are working to a road level of about 4.7 metres, which, as you can see in the distance, the vertical groins, vertical piles which we put in, is about 1 metre down from there.
What difference does the wind make? It's pretty brisk today, but you've had stronger than this, I'm sure.
Yes, the other day we were actually grounded on the boat. We could not get ashore because of the wind and the weather, and we found that the actual groin, which is very weighty in itself and is weighed down with a hell of a lot of counterweights, had moved about 1.7 metres with the wind. And of course, that being the case, we find it very, very difficult to get the thing back again. It's all manpower and guts, you know.
The plant equipment all around me, the crane that you can hear ticking away in the background, is all floating on a Mexi float, or sitting on a Mexi float. And one of the Mexi float crews with me now from the Port Squadron RCT, Corporal Stuart Bryden. Is this a normal sort of task for an RCT Mexi float crew?
No, this is very unusual indeed.
How are you getting on with the sappers?
We're working well together.
What exactly have you got on board this Mexi float? You've got concrete mixer, crane, all sorts of things. There's no danger of the whole thing sinking, is there?
No, it could take a lot more than this and still.
Tell me how it handles, because it's an ungainly sort of thing, it always seems to me.
Well, with the tides and the winds, it tends to go sideways a lot instead of the way you want it to go. But it's handling quite well, as you can see. Short, confined spaces, it's manoeuvring quite well.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to try and speak to a diver underwater. At the other end of an underwater radio is Corporal Ginge Kelly. Ginge, can you hear me all right? Tell me, what's the water like today? It's cold, is it? What are you doing underwater? Can you tell me? Doing a bit of drilling. Okay, then. It wasn't terribly clear, but that's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Over and out. Earlier on, we heard about the design of the steel containers, ISO containers, are going to be filled with concrete and used as anchors. Well, one of the people involved in actually putting them in the ground and building them is Staff Sergeant Derek Neal. Can I ask you, how easy is it to dig a hole, put a container in it, fill it full of concrete?
Well, it's quite easy, in fact. We use plant for it, the high mark. The problem with the...
That's a digger sort of thing, isn't it?
That's a track digger with a very long arm and bucket on the end of it. And it digs that quite easily. We've had no problems in that respect. There's been a little bit of rock in the ground, but it's taken 2 or 3 hours maybe.
What's the soil like here? Is it peat?
There's the peat top, couple of feet more in cases, and mainly clay underneath. But it's no problem for the digger. We've hit a little bit of rock in places, but not enough to hinder the digging.
This may be a silly question to an engineer, but I noticed you've taken the lids off the containers to pour the concrete into them. How do you cut open a container?
It's quite simple, really. It's oxyacetylene cutter. Matter of a guy getting on top of it and just cutting away. It come up quite easy.
What do you do with the lids, or is that a silly question?
Well, the lids have been used as formwork. We've got to backfill and front fill the containers with concrete, and we've used the lids for the formwork to do this.
Now, the container full of concrete is the anchor for the mooring. How's the mooring bit, the bit you tie the rope onto, secured to the concrete?
Well, this is held in position by massive 2-inch diameter bolts, about up to 3 feet long, really massive bolts. These are embedded in the concrete. Obviously the thread and top of the bolts stick out of the top of the concrete, and the capstan sits over the top of that, obviously bolted up.
So it'd be like a sort of bollard on a dockside.
Oh yes, very much so.
The whole thing's
It's really a massive construction, weighing a couple of tons.
Okay, well thank you very much indeed. Well, finally, before I leave, I want to talk to the man who's made it possible for me to get here and go back again without having to walk, and that's the man who's been involved in building the road, Staff Sergeant Dixie Dean. Tell me about this road, which I notice is labelled Dean Road. That's after you, presumably, is it?
That's quite correct, yeah. It's a suggestion by General Thorne that he suggested that it be called Dean Road after all the effort we put into it. I myself, plus about 5 men, constructed about 1.4 kilometres of road, made up basically of sand, synthetic materials and rock.
How easy is it to build a road over this rather boggy peat ground?
Well, seeing that the peat is anything from, say, for instance, a metre to or about 4 metres deep in places, you're really floating a road on nothing. So everything above the ground has got to be absolutely spot on. Otherwise, any, say, weakness in the synthetic materials and the whole road subsides.
It's a good road at the moment. What sort of lifetime do you think it's going to have? Is it going to need a lot of maintenance?
It will need maintenance until it has a bituminous coat on top of some description. Then it will keep the weather off of it. I mean, but on a long-term policy, what's supporting the road at present is the fact that the roots on the heather and such like are binding the surface together. But once after, say, about 4 or 5 years, that deteriorates and turns into